Dead Rising presents a world where chaos forces people to make impossible choices, and few characters embody these moral complexities better than Ed DeLuca. At first glance, Ed seems like a simple character, a helicopter pilot with a job to do, but his decisions throughout the game reveal a man torn between loyalty, survival, and his own fears. Ed DeLuca isn't a major character in Dead Rising in terms of screen time, but he's crucial to the story. As Frank West's hired helicopter pilot, Ed is responsible for getting Frank in and out the zombie-infested Willamette. He's the only one willing to fly into the chaos, showing courage from the very beginning. While the game doesn't focus on him intensively, Ed's presence bookends Frank's journey, and his actions directly influence Frank's fate. However, Ed's seemingly simple role as a pilot quickly becomes complex as his decisions reveal his internal struggles, showing that he's far from the standard helpful side character. Ed's journey starts long before the events at Willamette Parkview Mall. He was piloting the helicopter that Frank hired to get him into the town of Willamette. As Frank looked for a story, they flew over the main street of the town, initially mistaking what they saw for rioters. As they got closer, it became clear that they were not riders, but the first signs of the undead outbreak. The world was beginning to unravel, and Ed, just like Frank, was about to be caught in it. Following Frank's request, Ed agreed to drop him off at the heliport in the center of the town. He also agreed to return and pick Frank up 3 days later, giving Frank time to investigate and get his story. This moment sets up Ed as a man with a job to do. He's not a fighter or a hero, but someone who's simply trying to get through the situation as best as he can. Unlike Frank, who actively seeks to uncover the truth behind the outbreak, Ed is just there for the paycheck. His mission is straightforward: drop Frank off, wait for the job to finish, and pick him up. Ed doesn't have the same drive to understand the outbreak or save others. He's there to just survive and get paid. This practically paints Ed as more of a reluctant participant rather than a full-fledged hero. However, it's also clear that Ed isn't heartless. Throughout the story, he's constantly in contact with Frank, concerned about the timing of his rescue, but he doesn't try to abandon him. Ed's priorities are simple. He wants to stay alive and get out safely. But when the time comes for them to make critical decisions, his instincts from self-preservation clash with his obligations to Frank. One of Ed's most controversial decisions happened in the closing moments of the game. As Frank fights his way through the Willamette Mall, Ed finds himself face to face with the true horror of the outbreak. His loyalty to Frank begins to waver as he's forced to confront the fear of what's really at stake. At one point, he decides to leave without Frank, citing the danger and the need to prioritize his own survival. It seems like a betrayal, but is it really? When we examine Ed's character, it becomes clear that his fear is justified. He's not a fighter or a hero. He's a civilian with limited resources, staring down on a threat that he likely never anticipated. This choice reflects Ed's struggle between loyalty and self-preservation, showcasing a man pushed to his limits. While it might feel like betrayal, it's rooted in a very human response to fear and survival. Ed's fate varies depending on the choices and circumstances in Dead Rising. These different endings provide more insight into his character, revealing how his choices and fear manifest in various outcomes. At the end of 3 days, Ed stops on the rooftop of a nearby building to verify that Frank is still alive. He's pleasantly surprised to see Frank waiting for him on the heliport. However, when Ed goes to pick him up, things take a tragic turn. A zombie attacks him inside the helicopter, causing Ed to lose control of the aircraft and crash into the clock tower in Leisure Park. The crash and Ed's death represent the irony of the survival instinct. He survived the outbreak and the chaos of Willamette, only to meet his end at the hands of a zombie. In this alternative ending, Ed arrives at the heliport and finds Frank alive and well. However, Frank has gathered several other survivors, including Jessica McCartney, Otis Washington, and others. Ed, now part of a much bigger rescue mission, seems less certain but continues to help Frank. The ending plays out with Ed's dialogues varying depending on how many survivors Frank has saved, reflecting the increasing responsibility and danger of the situation. In this darker ending, Ed stops to check on Frank but finds no one at the heliport. Assuming the worst, he believes Frank has died and is then killed by a zombie himself. This ending highlights the theme of uncertainty and the harsh reality that survival is never guaranteed, even for those who try to hold on to hope. Here, Ed arrives at the heliport to find nobody waiting, and Otis emerges from the security room. He assumes Frank has perished and ferries out Otis, Jesse, and the other survivors Frank saved. This ending illustrates the breakdown of Ed's connection to Frank's story as he shifts from being Frank's rescuer to merely doing his job, ferrying survivors out of a now destroyed town. Ed DeLuca's choices highlight the moral complexities that Dead Rising brings to the forefront. His decisions are morally gray, not because he's a villain, but because he's a human. In a situation where survival is uncertain, every character is forced to make difficult choices, and Ed's actions serve as a reminder of how fragile loyalty can be when fear takes over. While Frank represents the hero archetype, fighting through waves of zombies and risking everything to get the story, Ed represents a different side of humanity, one that's relatable yet imperfect. His choices might frustrate the player, but they also bring a dose of realism to the story. Not everyone is cut out to be a hero, and Ed's actions remind us of, in extreme circumstances, self-preservation can only take precedence over loyalty. Ultimately, Ed DeLuca's story serves as a microcosm of Dead Rising's themes of survival, fear, and moral ambiguity. He's a man caught between his duty and his survival instincts, and his decisions highlight the difficulty of navigating such a world. Ed's final fate serves as a grim reminder that sometimes even the toughest decisions can't guarantee safety. In the world of Dead Rising, there are no easy answers. Ed DeLuca's actions may frustrate us, but they all make us think. His story asks us to consider what we would do in this position. Could we make the hard choices to survive even if it meant betraying a friend? Or would we risk it all for someone else? Ed's story may be a small part of Dead Rising, but it's one that stays with us long after we finish the game. Thank you for watching this breakdown of Ed DeLuca. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into the complex characters of Dead Rising. Let me know in the comments which character you'd like to see next. Thanks again, and see you next time. Peace.